I want to give a really stark warning here to people about what you can and cannot do with your homestead property when you're trying to do estate planning, when you're trying to think about kids, spouses, other family members, or whatever. Some people think, even some lawyers, hey, I can leave my house to whoever I want to, but that's not the case at all. There are statutory and even constitutional provisions which override what some people are doing in wills. I'm talking primarily about the homestead protection, but I'm also talking about elective share. And in law, we talk about the three different versions of homestead. One is protection from creditors. And this goes back to olden days when guy would go out and gamble away all the fortune. We didn't want spouses to be thrown out in the streets, so homesteads can't be subjected to creditor attacks. The second thing, somewhat related to that, is homestead. Decades ago, maybe 100 years ago, we wanted to kind of make homestead a safe place. So there's a cap on homestead. But the third one, and this is where it really gets tricky and really a lot of people don't know a lot about, is the attempted devise of homestead. That language is kind of drilled into my head, and here's how it goes. The attempted devise of homestead property is void. And I had one that came up that was a really screwy situation that I couldn't even wrap the brain around at first, and here's this. Dude had gone to a lawyer and wanted to provide, knew he was dying, so he goes and he has the will, and the will says, I want to make sure that my beloved child, minor at the time, had a disability. I'm going to make sure it gets to her. And that's all drafted in a will. Well, here's the deal. The attempted devise of a homestead property when the decedent is survived by a spouse or minor child is ineffective. It is void. And the operation of that has just completely mind-bending application. In this particular case, it demonstrates it. So guy, girl, whatever, wants to do something which makes complete sense, right? The house is the most valuable asset, wants to make sure that the disabled minor kid gets it, so specifies that in a will. I want my minor disabled child to get that. Sorry, folks, you can't do that. And that's what's insane and what people kind of have to take a step back and think about it. Even experienced practitioners. I got another war story I want to talk about, and that's this. Again, will is done. Will provides for where the deceased wants everything to go. And then oopsie daisy, will doesn't think about the fact that surviving spouse has very important protections, including homestead and including elective share. So that situation completely upended. And again, this happens in that blended situation. Because the decedent thought that he could just carve out a little section over here for the spouse and leave another section over here for the adult children. This really comes into play with like family money, like where grandmom and granddad are the ones that actually came up with the money, and dad goes and buys this big fancy house, thinks he's going to be able to pass it along to the kids that are part of that family, and then oopsie, surviving spouse comes in here and upends that whole thing. This is complicated, and I'm just kind of scratching the surface here with these factual scenarios, but I have seen cases where, spouses think they're cut out, left out in the cold because the will says this, and they start packing up their stuff ready to move out. But if that's your situation, mom, dad, grandmom, whatever, if the kids, the stepkids or whatever are trying to kick the new spouse out, you got to understand that that is not at all the case. There's some very tricky scenarios that require a close examination. If you are in the thinking about death category, that means you're estate planning. If you are in the unalive category, that means somebody around you is dying or dead. If you are on the beneficiary class, either as a surviving spouse or kids over here, and this stuff is going to be pushed and pulled and tagged apart like a piece of taffy, subscribe to this channel so you can learn more. If you've got questions, drop them in. They'll be happy to answer them.